Hello students, I'm going to be reviewing chapter 11 today, and that's on interpersonal conflict and the conflict management skills that we all should have. The first three things we're going to look at is the definition of interpersonal conflict, the myths about interpersonal conflict, and then the conflict issues, the things that we normally fight about. And we're going to call these three things the preliminaries to interpersonal conflict. First, we have to understand what it is, we have to dispel the myths, and we have to know what are common areas that we may have conflict about. So first off, the definition of interpersonal conflict occurs, so interpersonal conflict occurs when people are interdependent, and that means you're reliant on them for either your happiness, you're reliant on them for your shared activities, you're reliant on them because they're living under the same roof you are, and there's a connection between the two of you. What happens when conflict arises is you both become aware of the fact that you have two different goals, and those goals are getting in the way of you getting what you want. So if I want to save money, and that's my goal, but my husband wants to take a vacation, we have incompatible goals. His goal is to go on vacation. My goal is to save money. And if he goes on that vacation, he's going to get in the way of me achieving my goal. And if I save money, I'm going to be getting in the way of him achieving his goal. So you can see why conflict makes us upset, because we have this goal and we want to achieve this goal, and this other person's getting in the way of it. And that's really how we look at these things, and that's why conflict can be so difficult for us to manage. The next thing we're going to look at are the myths of interpersonal conflict. And these are things that we believe that are false. These are completely false, and they are not true of conflict at all. So first of all, we believe that conflict should be avoided at all costs, and that is incorrect. Conflict is something that is going to come. There is no way for us to avoid it, and we should manage it the best we can, because when we manage our conflict, not only is our relationship better, we become more close with that person, and we feel like they're truly working with us, that we're a team that's working together instead of two individuals that are conflicting, working against one another. But you also get better at it. So as you learn how to manage conflict, it doesn't completely throw you for a loop when it happens, and your relationship isn't damaged because of the conflict. So you should never think that if you're having conflict that your relationship is in trouble or that you're going to break up. You should say, well, of course we're going to have conflict. It's only natural, and I shouldn't be at all disenchanted with the fact that I'm having conflict. Conflict also does not damage a relationship. So the belief that it does damage a relationship is false. Conflict actually can improve our relationship because, again, it provides a sense of intimacy. We're working together. We can work things out, and that will strengthen your relationship. The fourth myth is that conflict is destructive because it reveals our bad sides. And that also is not true. It depends on how you fight. Conflict can certainly be destructive if you are so focused on getting your way that you ignore what the other person needs. So when we show that we're petty, that we need to be in control, that we have unrealistic expectations, well, yes, that can be very destructive. So what we need to do when engaging in conflict is let go of our pettiness, let go of our need to be in control, and realize that sometimes our expectations are incredibly unreasonable. And last but not least, the fifth myth is that there always has to be a winner and a loser in conflict, and that is not at all the case. Both parties can win a little and lose a little, as they do in compromise, but in reality, our goal in conflict is to come out with what we refer to as a win-win solution. That means both parties win and they don't have to give up anything. And the problem that I see in most interpersonal relationships is compromise is so easy that we just jump to that and we don't even try to get to a win-win situation. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this lecture. So those are the myths. So we have the definition, which we already went over, and the myths. And so now let's talk about some of the conflict issues that are going to arise and that are common in interpersonal relationships. The first is intimacy issues, such as how much affection you're getting and how much sex a couple's having. The next are power issues, and this is basically possessiveness demands, lack of equality in the relationship. One person has more friends and we spend more time with your friends than mine, and you always get to choose the friends. And then also leisure time. How do we spend our leisure time, and how much leisure time does each person get? You'll see often in young married couples and even more long-term married couples that there is often a sense that women have less free time than men do. And you'll see that equality become very problematic for couples because one of them is working so much harder than the other one, usually in the home. Then third thing is the third area that we can have conflict over are our personal flaws. The fact that we drink, we smoke, the way we style our hair, the clothes we wear, the way we drive, anything that you would look at in somebody and say, well, that's just their shortcoming and that's irritating me. The fourth area that we can have conflict in is personal distance, and this refers to frequent absences, heavy job commitments, you're studying all the time. Some of you have mentioned this semester that your spouse is frustrated because you're always doing homework, and if you're not doing homework, you're at work, and you're not having any personal time together. Well, that would be a conflict issue that centers around personal distance. The fifth area that you can have disagreement arise in are social issues. This refers to politics, social policies, things that you believe in. Parents, we often argue about one another's families, and we mean extended families. And then personal values, when we say things like, how could you feel that way? Or how could you value that? It doesn't make sense to me. Those would be a social issue conflict. And then last but not least, distrust issues. And this is when we have conflict over previous lovers. We may have conflicts over opposite sex friendships, and we may have issues over lying or somebody not being forthcoming with what's going on. So all of those issues can produce conflict. There was also some other mention of how these issues also come up in a first fight. So when a couple first gets together, they eventually will have that first big fight, and they talk about, there's 4 issues there: uncertainty over commitment, jealousy, violation of expectation. So I have an expectation that you'll call me every day, and when that partner of mine doesn't do that, that violation leads to our first big fight. And then the last area that new couples can have a fight over is personality differences. You're very subdued, but I'm very outgoing, and that can also cause some conflict.